Hey, good brothers and good sisters, taking a look at a modern interpretation of a vintage classic today. Looking at Zica. There's probably going to be a few different interpretations of the name, like Neka, Nika. Taking a look at Dargon from the new Warriors of Symbion 3 3/4 scale line. And I want to give a big thank you to Big Bad Toy Store for this one, because I wasn't going to get one of these. A lot of the modern releases aren't really in my budget, but thanks to Nick and everyone over at Big Bad Toy Store for this one, and they are available over at Big Bad Toy Store. The original Sectaurs, according to this little chomper dude, were released in the date on it says 1984, but I seem to remember them coming out in 1985. Sometimes the mold dates are a year in advance. And the really interesting thing about these new figures being released by Zica, is that they're a totally different scale. So what we have seen with the Classics He-Man figures and Masterpiece Transformers figures, Classics Thundercats figures, is a enlarging of the scale. They're taking figures that used to be a certain size in our hand, and in order to recreate that feel as adults, they're making it larger. This is a different direction. This guy is much, much smaller than I ever remember him being. And I wasn't sure at first when I saw the prototype pictures of this. I thought, well, okay, they're really tiny now. I prefer the bigger ones, the vintage ones. But now, once again, that I have these in hand and I'm looking at it, I haven't even opened the package yet. And I can honestly tell you, I think this thing looks fantastic. Such an interesting idea to shrink down an old classic, but not to the size of a Micro Machine or like a Mega Construx figure like the Masters of the Universe toy line is getting. Let's take a quick look at the packaging before I rip it open or cut it open. The ones that come from Big Bad Toy Store still have the peg hole intact. And it looks like there's even a sticker back there, just so that it doesn't pop out. For those that want to keep the peg hole punch firmly intact. I usually just pop those out on a brand new figure. It doesn't really bother me. If it's a vintage figure, I'll not pop out the little peg hole, because I realize, even though it's not something that's all that important to me, other vintage collectors, it is very cool for them to be able to see an unpunched card. And there's some brand new custom artwork of Dargon, but very inspired by the original one, and I'll do a comparison with the original Dargon, who's back here on his Dragon Flyer, with the figure. But just through the bubble, he looks exactly like the original Dargon, down to the finest detail. Exact same color scheme, exact same type of glossy metallic paint. The head is the one thing that looks a bit different, so once I open him up, we'll be able to take a closer look at that. The hairstyle, actually, is what seems most different from the original one, but I love that it is just the original Dargon. It's not a reinterpretation, a reimagining, a reboot. It's Dargon the way we remember him, the same build, the same look. And on the back, we get a little write-up of what happened on the planet Symbion, on the distant planet Symbion. A genetic experiment fails. Frightening changes take place that cannot be stopped. The result? A world where insects grow to frightening proportions. A world where the inhabitants have taken on the awesome characteristics of insects. Where the good of the Shining Realm is locked in mortal combat with the evil of the Dark Domain. Sectaur, trademark, warriors fight in the ultimate battle for survival. A battle that is now in your hands. That is extremely similar, if not word for word, the original little bio write-up for the Sectaurs toys. Nothing has changed here. So it's the planet Symbion, the genetic thing gone haywire, the Is it the Shining Realm is the good guys? Right down to in your hands because of the puppets, the actual hand puppets that Dargon and Spidrax came with. And then there was also the beetle and the tarantula. And you get pictures of some of the other figures available. There's Dargon, Spidrax, Mantor, and they have little symbols to show you if they're the good guys or the bad guys. Zack, Skull Soldier, and, well, there's a sticker covering it, but this is the Shining Realm figure right there. This is probably easily removable. And right here, we've got the little hairdryer symbol. As a precautionary measure to prevent damage, heat should be applied to any body part before attempting to remove it. This is especially important for the hands due to the fragility of the wrist joints. Applying heat with a dryer is recommended. I don't think I've ever seen that warning before. Now, like I said, I don't collect all that much modern stuff anymore, but that is really cool that they're giving you this tip right on the card now. It's a tip a lot of adult toy collectors know about, and it's very important. But it sounds like they're warning against what happened with a lot of the modern G.I. Joe figures. This scale, the wrists would always snap, or often snapped, on those Joe figures. So that's really cool that they give you a warning and say, hey, you know, it is what it is. It's the year that it is. It's the materials that everyone's using. And do what you can in order to save this thing from breaking. And I also just want to say Zica's logo is awesome. I've never seen it before, but it's very 80s to me. It really is in the spirit of the old Kenner logo and the old Mattel logo, Hasbro. It's very fun and looks cool. And one more thing I really appreciate about the packaging is that if you do decide to keep it mint on card, as a lot of adult collectors might, it's got this little thing right here that comes out and allows the card to stand. That's such a cool little extra bonus that so many vintage figures didn't have, because they never expected people to keep things mint on card. But even modern figures don't have that a lot of the time, or it's not specifically designed to do that. It's just a bubble that happens to be close to the bottom, and it sort of stays like that. Some of the Super 7 vintage style figures can sort of stand like that. I'm thinking She-Ra in particular doesn't stand all that well. She falls forward. But they've designed this bubble here to have this little extra bump there. And now if you don't want to pop out the little peg hole, if you don't want to hang it on a wall with a push pin or anything like that, you can just have it sitting on your desk or sitting on a shelf, and it's really sturdy. So I'm glad they included that too. All right, I've carefully gone around the edges with an X-Acto knife, and let's free Prince Dargon, which it's interesting that he's just referred to as Dargon. He was Prince Dargon in the original toy line. And he is really secure in here. In addition to this bubble that is on the card, see, in the old days, the figure would just be in this bubble loose, rattling around. And now they're in these little trays that keep them from bouncing around. When they bounce around freely like that, you can get paint scuff marks all over the inside of it. This is a little bit more protective. And accessories included in extra little baggies. These little things speak volumes to me about these companies. A company that adds this little thing so you can stand the card up like that. This was a very easy cut. Sometimes it's kind of difficult to cut through this stuff in case you want to just put a piece of tape here and reseal it. A company that will put the accessories in a miniature little tiny bag like this so that it's not bouncing around getting stuffed. Even more accessories tucked in behind here, and a figure in this nice, secure clamshell. A company that does all that stuff is #1 in my book before I even touch the figure. So I'm very impressed with Zica, with the packaging of this figure. And now that I actually have him in hand, I know there was a warning about the hair dryer, so I'm going to be extra careful with this. If it feels like it's not going to go, I'm not going to force it, but it's, you know, I want to do this for the folks who just want to pull it right out of the package and play around with it. If I break it, then heed the warning. But as far as the one I have goes, everything is moving fairly freely. This hand feels a little on the tight side. It might be because of some of the paint application. But if you're experienced with modern G.I. Joes, that's what this is. It feels exactly like a modern G.I. Joe. The feet on this one in the package were pointing down, so let's try to correct that a bit. Moves into place fairly well. I am being careful here. Yeah, it feels pretty good. It feels exactly like a modern G.I. Joe to me. So I'm not having a lot of trepidation about moving him around. And once you kind of work the kinks out, it feels like the first movement of the joint is going to be the stiffest, and then it will loosen up to where it should be. Let's take a look at his articulation before we get into the detail on it. I'm interested how he is similar or different from a modern G.I. Joe. His shoulder articulation can do a full 360 like a Joe. He's got this awesome, fantastic bicep articulation. On a lot of modern figures, this is where it usually stops. So that's really, really impressive. Elbow joint is great. On some modern Joes, it doesn't bend very far, but he's got fantastic elbow articulation. He's also got swivel arm, so it swivels all the way around. This is really, really good. Wrist can rotate. This one's tight. It was. It's better now. And you can see a little bit of paint coming off. So I think that's just the extra paint that was making it a little stiffer. So the wrists go 360 and they go in as well. Both of them. So on the modern Joes, I think the 50th anniversary G.I. Joes, they had one of the fists go in like this, and the other hand fist could go up and down like He-Man's hold the sword aloft thing, which made it really much better for holding rifles. On the Sectaurs figures, at least on Dargon, I'm assuming they're all the same, the hands can go in and all the way out too. That's beautiful. So used to modern Joes, most of them not having this, which really limits some of their weapon holding capability. And Dargon is not going to have any trouble whatsoever holding a sword if he comes with one. I'm assuming he does. And that looks really, really good. Usually you don't get that type of realistic looking sword holding pose on a smaller figure. It usually takes a 6-inch or bigger figure to have that kind of that posturing. That looks great. What does the head do? It goes 360, and it also goes up and down. We're looking at basically exactly the same type of head as a modern Joe or modern style Star Wars figure. Not much up and down, a little bit there though. And then you gotta have the antenna like the original, and that really takes me back. That is nice and floppy. It's not gonna snap or break. It feels like the same material that was on the original Sectaurs figures. So, give a big Orange Cassidy thumbs up, enthusiastic thumbs up to nailing that. That's perfect. Let's take a look at the leg articulation. He does have, before that, an ab crunch, a little bit of an ab crunch, and it's more like a waist crunch instead of being up here and putting a cut in the detailing in the chest. This gets to stay looking like the original, and instead the twist is in the waist and also rocking back and forth, and the cut is hidden by the belt. So very, very smart engineering on their part there to hide a point of articulation with the belt. And the belt is just like the original one, a floppy material. How does this... I'm not sure if there is a connection point or if this just is one loop. I think it's just a loop that I guess you have to just pull off, or maybe this will pull apart. I'm not going to try, but I don't see a connection point. Like the original one had a buckle that actually you could plug in the front here. This is just a loop. So yeah, I think it's just meant to stay on there permanently. Hip articulation. He can do the good old Spartan kick. And this is one thing I like to do with a lot of these figures. See what kind of balance we've got here. I don't think I'll be able to balance this guy on one foot. Is that a magnet? That looks like a magnet right there. He's got, oh my goodness. That is so awesome. He's got magnets on his feet. That actually might help with the balancing. So I've got one of these 12-inch figure stands that are metal. I'll just pull out the back part of it. And let's see, it does. I don't think I've ever seen magnets in a figure's feet for sturdiness before, except for that Spider-Man figure that came out years ago that had magnets at his feet, and that was his actual gimmick. So I don't know if this is because they're bugs and they're supposed to be able to stick on surfaces, but without the magnet, fairly sturdy, even without the stand. Pretty sturdy without the magnet, like metal base. But in terms of the 1 foot Spartan kick challenge, not happening. Unless, look how easy that is. I am absolutely fascinated by these little magnets in his feet. I didn't know that was going to be in there. Yeah, I can't get that to go. And I've gotten quite a few of these really big, bulky, wobbly figures to stand on 1 foot. But it's almost like he's wearing cowboy boots. They're just too thin and narrow, and I think the magnet might also be making his foot not completely flat either, which is making it a little trickier. I love a good challenge, but this, yeah, you don't want to be sitting here watching me do this for a half hour, but look how easy that is. That's crazy. I'm tapping him, he's wobbling. It takes quite a bit to knock him off, so if you have a metal surface, like a metal shelf, or even just get a metal plate or sheet, oh, that's awesome. That's game-changing stuff right there. Now you don't have to, well, he's pretty sturdy even without the metal base, but with the metal base, that is incredible. Well done, well done. All right, on to the rest of the articulation on Dargon. The hip does have a lot of forward as well as a bit of out. Can he do the splits? No. No, this guy's old school. He can't do the splits. Knee bend is fantastic. Look at that double jointed knee, and it's almost heel to his posterior. He's got so much of a knee bend. It's one of those good winding up for a soccer kick type of deals. That is awesome. Awesome knee articulation. Really, really good. And then he's got some ankle articulation. A lot. A heck of a lot of ankle articulation. He can point his foot out, push it all the way in. Even feels like it kind of goes side to side a little bit. Just a bit. So, like a lot of those modern transformers, oh, it does. If you get it from the right angle, it bends in quite a bit. So you can... Oh, that's kind of weird. It's... Okay, check this out. It doesn't actually go in. It feels like you should be able to just turn it like that. It won't go that way. but it turns that way. Isn't that wild? Look at that. If you go that way, you'll get that ankle tilt. But not the regular way of most other figures. So that is a wild new type of pivot that I haven't seen on any figures before. And you can get some really, really, like, wow, walking against the wind. How cool is that? Oh, I'm super impressed by this guy. This is definitely a case of you can't appreciate this guy until you get him out of the package and actually futz around with him, play around with him a bit. And the magnets are definitely a lot of fun with this guy. They really take a lot of the frustration of posing a figure away as well. It can be so tough to try to get a figure to stand. I know a lot of them have stands, and he even has holes in his feet. So I'm assuming that a G.I. Joe stand will work with him. We'll grab old Blowtorch here and take his stand and see if the modern G.I. Joe sized pegs will work. No, just a bit on the loose side. So it's enough to hold him, but not securely. He doesn't really plug in. And he comes with a couple of accessories. So the shield came in a little baggie, and the rest of the accessories, wow. Gold mine. We hit the mother lode here. Look at all this stuff. Again, I was not expecting all of this. It comes with the shield that the original Dargon came with. It comes with a sword the original came with. These are etched in my mind. The rifle that the original one came with an extra black bit of paint application. So it's wild to see a guy much smaller than the original version, but see his accessories with more detail. The original sword didn't have paint on the handle either. So I love that even though they've reduced the size of the figure, they're adding more detail. Same with the guns. These guns look exactly like the originals, right down to the loops at the end of the handle if you wanted to tie a string. And more detail. They've got that little bit of black paint application. Nice gold look to them. The Sectaurs accessories, a lot of them came in gold, but it didn't suffer from gold plastic syndrome. It was a bendy gold material. And shall I take the risk? This feels pretty bendy. Maybe not as bendy as the original stuff. No, it's more rigid than the original, so don't be bending this stuff. Unless maybe you could heat it up with a hairdryer, but it's got a little bit of a bend to it. I wonder what this is right here. The shield is different from the original one. It does have these two little pegs here. So I'm assuming that whatever this little piece of black rubbery plastic is, it's supposed to plug into these pegs, and I guess be like a brace for the shield to make it a little more like a Captain America shield, because on the original one the handle is just in the middle of the shield. So this is pretty much the only thing they've really changed the design of over the original one. This might be the one thing that you have some issues with connecting, because it's a little tricky. You need a thumbnail in order to get it on there, and once you get it on there, it doesn't seem to be holding all that securely onto there. It doesn't give you that nice pop feeling that it's on there secure. It's just gonna slide right off. Yeah, it's just slid on and it'll slide right off, but that's what it looks like. It looks cool. I'm not sure how functional it is, but that's interesting. And he comes with a whole bunch of hands, removable hands. The original ones just had the weapon gripping hands, And they have gone all out here. He has a fist. Assuming, yep, left and right fist with that really nice blue metallic coloring. He's got the hand reaching forward. Very pretty. Nice sculpt. Left and right versions of the hand reaching forward. Options. Love those options. Trigger finger on both hands have a trigger finger for the pistols or the rifle. What would this be? These final two just look like regular gripping hands, and I'm not sure if they're exactly identical. It looks like it's a bit of a wider grip than the ones that are on his hand, so I don't know. Maybe one is more suited for the sword and one is more suited for the rifle. I'm not sure, or the pistols. But that's a lot of hands. 2, 4, 6, 8. The two that are on the figure right now. 10. 10 hands. 5 pairs of hands. That's a lot of extras. That's a lot of bang for your buck. So I'm going to heed the warning of the packaging here. And I'm not going to swap these hands out unless I'm using a hairdryer to loosen them up. So I'm just going to keep the ones that he came with on there and try to equip him with his weapons. So first let's take a look and see what it looks like when he holds his dual pistolas. They fit in there perfectly, nice and tight, and I think if you shoot them, yeah, he doesn't drop them. They're lasers though, so they don't have that much recoil. And they should fit right in the holsters on the sides. They fit just snugly enough. Problem with some of the G.I. Joe figures that have these types of holsters is you just turn the figure upside down and the guns fall right out. But these are just like the originals. They just have a little bit of snugness to them, and it's holding in quite nicely. Shield. You can, I guess you slide this part through here so that the hand can grip the handle. The problem with that is, how do you do that? I feel like if it's going to pop that black part off, I don't think you even need him gripping the shield. This strap here is enough to hold it on there, and it looks really nice. Yeah, that's fine. Sword. So maybe one of the other hands might be a little bit better for gripping the sword, but the material is bendy enough that I think this hand should work as well. Just fine. Yeah. He holds it just fine. No problems there. Nice and sturdy. And one thing I wanted to check, we'll take the shield off, see how he does at double gripping a sword. The handle isn't all that long on the sword, so there's not much room to play with here, but thanks to the wrists bending every which way. Oh yeah, that's awesome. It is so hard to get a figure this size, or even a 6-inch figure, to be able to hold a sword with two hands. And this Dargon has no trouble whatsoever. Can even hold it out a little bit more. He can do the whole thunder. Oh, wrong planet. But that's really cool that they have enough articulation to do that. Double grip a sword. And then he also comes with this rifle, which should fit in very easily, like so. And he can hold the underneath part to steady it. I love how bendy, flexible the hand material is. There is no frustration here whatsoever futzing around with this thing. This is fun. Some of these can be really frustrating, but this guy honestly is super fun to pose. That's what it's all about as an adult collector. being able to put him into different poses, dynamic poses, and not pull your hair out trying to get him to do it. This guy can hold his weapons perfectly, no problems. He can stand perfectly. The magnets are so awesome because he's not going to be falling over. Yeah, that is fantastic. Super impressed with this guy. And the big comparison I really wanted to see, and I'm sure a lot of people want to see, is with his original version, the original Sectaurs Dargon by Coleco back in the 80s. So huge size difference, but not much of a detail difference. These guys were really ahead of their time with the black wash on them. That might look like shadowing, but it's black wash on the actual paint job. They had such beautiful paint jobs, and the new figure does not have that, but the blue paint, the original figures weren't painted on the body. Like that's blue plastic right there with black wash on it. This looks like it's painted blue, but it's a really shimmering, shining, metallic blue, a really beautiful blue. He's still got the red stripes on his black pants, got that metallic blue on his feet as well. The shields look exactly the same. The swords look exactly the same. It's wild. It's just, he's shrunk down. The gauntlets are almost exactly the same. The belt, it is such a tiny detail, but he does have all of the detail the original belt had. It's got that little Shining Realm tiny symbol on the buckle. Same necklace. The smaller figure, the new figure, has a gold chain around his neck. In the original one, they didn't paint the chain going around his neck. So, once again, smaller figure, more paint applications. That's really awesome. And then the biggest difference that I noticed was the hairstyle. The hair on the original one was more of an orangey yellow, and it's more of a lemon yellow on the new one. Same bug eyes. The antennae are a little longer on the original guys. I thought in the pictures the antennae on the new guys looked shorter, and they are. They're a little on the short side. Old school, hardcore Sectaurs fans might think they're maybe a little too short, but they might need to be based on the size of the figure. And then the final comparison is the pistols. I can't tell you how awesome it is to just drop this guy and he stands. We'll compare the weapons. Here's one of the original Dargon pistols. And if you want a closer look at Dargon and everything that he comes with, I did an in-depth Dargon review a few months back. And here's the new modern, I guess we can call him, Dargon's pistol. Recreated every detail, right down to the loops. And then with the rifle, again, every detail recreated, just shrunk down. They really, really did their homework here. Love it. And here's one thing I was really curious about. What would the new smaller figures look like on the original beasts? So he should fit easily, and he does. He can't do the splits, but he's got more than enough range to sit on the Dragon Flyer, and he looks really tiny on this Dragon Flyer. Like, the Dragon Flyer looks like a giant. This is more like something Gandalf would summon in Lord of the Rings. So it doesn't quite look like a steed anymore like it originally did. Now it looks like some sort of giant monster thing. But it's still a nice combination. The metallic blue on the new Dargon goes very nicely with the metallic blue on the Dragon Flyer. Yeah, it's just me being so used to the original one and the size he is on the Dragon Flyer. It looks kind of wonky. It's like this guy got hit by a shrink ray by Spydrax, and now he's like a tinier version of himself, but he really sits on there perfectly. Nice and sturdy. So if that's your thing, if you think that looks cool, if you can hunt down a dragon flyer for your Dargon, or a spider flyer for one of your modern Spydrax figures, then that's going to be a nice way to display them. And the last comparison I have is with a modern G.I. Joe figure. This one is elevated a little bit because of his stand, but they look exactly the same size. So I'd say 4 inches. I don't know how much this metal stand is raising Dargon, but yeah, they look just about exactly the same size. The head on Dargon might be a little bit bigger, plus with the antenna it just feels like there's a lot more going on, the bigger eyes as well. But proportionately speaking, just about the same. Doesn't quite have that same elongated look that the modern Joes had. They kind of look like O-ring Joes that were stretched. And this Dargon, just, he looks proportioned more like an 80s Sectaurs figure. He's muscular. He's got just amazing leg movement and articulation, capable of some really dynamic poses that you don't have to worry about him knocking over, falling down. Yeah, he's going to look so much nicer opened up if you choose to open him up in a nice like action stance instead of just standing there straight-legged, straight-armed. You can have him staring up at the sword. There's a lot of fun to be had with this guy, just in terms of posing, and that's how a lot of adult collectors play, in quotes, play with their toys, from posing. So I think I'm gonna have a lot of fun just coming up with different poses for this guy and having him stand on the shelf. Really, really impressed with this figure. He might not go with all of your original Sectaurs figures if you have the original Coleco collection, but I think this is a fantastic start to a brand new line in a really cool new scale. Thank you, Patreon Tribe, for providing the channel Patreon power. We've had a whole bunch of new members join just this past week. Warm welcome to Charles Messing, Matt Blackledge, David Richmond, Vince, Michael Schmidt, Bruce E. Simmons, D. Wayne Morgan, and Brad Hughes. Thanks so much, good brothers, for joining the Patreon Tribe and showing your support. And a big thank you to Badgerwolf Prime, James Russell, and Mark Rudolph for the extra cheese, Carium crystals, and Energon. Much appreciated. What do you think of the new line of classic Sectaurs figures? Leave a thought in the comment spot. And to join the tribe, hit subscribe. Hope you're all staying safe, healthy, productive, and positive. Nerdmas Day.